Our speaker today is Tanya Lush, Director of Workforce Development at COVE. Tanya is a graduate of Acadia University in Wolfville, Nova Scotia with a degree in psychology, and Mount Saint Vincent University in Halifax. Tanya holds a Master's of Education in Human Relations and Psychology with specialization in occupational psychology and career development, where personality and ability intersect with vocational and professional interests. Welcome, Tanya.
Thank you. So great to be here. I'm so pleased. Thank you to everyone who's joined us here today. I'm very pleased to work with the Women in Engineering group as an ex officio member. I sit on that committee with the fine women that lead that committee. So thank you for inviting me here today. So be it January, it is that time of year when some people are struggling, and there's a lot on people's plates right now, especially with COVID and trying to work and having children at home and homeschooling, and there's just so many things on the go that we know this is a very timely topic, and we've heard a lot of really great feedback around how it's important to have these candid conversations. So that's what I want to start with, is really putting it out there that this is a conversation with a lot of candor and respectful discussion. And certainly the information I'm presenting is all public information. When I was reviewing and thinking about the literature and the information I was going to share, I pulled out very important things that are very Canadian in the Canadian context. And so the information is largely supplied by Canadian mental health and other mental health organizations that are very strong here in our own country, which is excellent. My goal really is to bring about some discussion and input from you as participants. But certainly the information I'll be presenting, I will be asking also for some feedback from you. You can share that in the chat box, or if we can manage, we can answer your hand if your hand is up, and we can manage getting to you. But you do have access to the chat box to share, because that's an important part of this. I want to share information with you and present, but I also would like to hear some of your anecdotes and stories of your journey around workplace mental health and wellness. So again, the end result, I hope, will be tools and practical tools and ways to move forward to support a more mentally healthy workplace and a more mentally healthy person for yourself, so you can go to work and show up and be genuine and bring your whole self to work and ensure that you perform and can contribute to your team and to your organization. So without further ado, we will begin. Excuse me while I navigate my screen here a little. So I think it's a good place to begin is to define what is psychological safety. So one of my favorite profs, she's at Harvard, Amy Edmondson, she talks a lot about psychological safety, and she's quite vocal these days. I noticed in the last few weeks especially, she's been very active on social media. So she defines it as a shared belief that I can bring my full self to work, and nobody's going to make me feel humiliated or targeted, and that I can speak up with my own ideas, I can have questions, and I can basically voice my concerns and even make mistakes. Psychological health is defined by the World Health Organization and the Public Health Agency of Canada, as presented here. So again, you'll notice the words well-being are strong here, and as well as self-actualization and understanding your own potential, and how the onus is on us, me as an individual, to ensure that I can handle and manage the normal stresses of my life and ensure that I am productive at work and can deliver, fruitful outcomes in whatever I do, especially in the workplace. And then, of course, there's a more holistic definition there as well, which I also love, and I've built entire wellness programs around holistic health. So that's spiritual, emotional, the importance of culture, equity, and social justice, and all that whole, all those whole components of who we are. That really is what psychological health is. So again, this is from Amy Edmondson, and I really like this pictogram. It's fun, but also engaging and sharing information around the high level, what I call the punch points of psychological safety. Want to pull out a couple that when I look at this pictogram, what is there? So a culture of silence is a dangerous culture. We've said this in organizational psychology forever and a day, that really when your most passionate people become silent, you really should start to worry. Look for that. That means there's something going on, and when people aren't speaking up, you should be digging into that. Basically, when you're at work, clear, candid, and direct communication is the way to go. Don't sugarcoat things. It's not about being nice. You see that there. It's not about being nice. It's about being respectful and being candid, and using that candor to ensure that clear communication is there, because if not, things can go quite awry quite quickly. And then basically, I want to also point out a couple more things here, is that, basically how much people benefit from each other by asking questions and being raw and admitting their mistakes. It's actually quite a learning process, and we talk about now the ability to fail and learn from our mistakes, and how that's now accepted and should be widely accepted within our organizations, because those are part of learning. And to that point, learning, engagement, and performance. It's not enough to just have talent in your organization and say, oh wow, we have whatever wonderful group of whatever engineers. But you have to ensure that they are being challenged in their learning, their engagement, and you must see the performance as well develop. And this is showing all aspects of psychological safety. Oh, I don't want you to see that yet. So a couple of questions here now I want to ask. Basically, I want to ask you, oh, sorry about this, there it is. I want to ask you if you can tell me, and I just gave you the answers, if you can tell me some numbers, if you know some of the numbers here in Canada that are relevant. So the first one I'm going to throw out to you is, in any given week, what do we think is the number of people who are really not well mentally, who are struggling mentally and call in sick and they cannot go to work? If we want to stick that in the chat box, maybe Amal and Heidi can help us have a look at some of the answers there. But what's the estimation per week that people are off not well because they're just not feeling mentally well? What do we think that is in Canada?
Just let everyone know I'm monitoring the chat, so just type it into the chat. We've got someone suggesting that 50% of people are calling in sick.
Okay, so okay, 50% actually are calling in sick because they're not well mentally. I'm looking for a number about how many people in Canada a week. Give me a number. Don't even give me a percentage. I want to know a number, a big juicy number. How many people would call in ill in the run of a week in Canada that are actually not well mentally? They're not feeling psychologically well. Yeah. Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
10,000?
No, it's Ava. Ava actually
Oh,
put it in there. Yeah,
okay.
it's half a million people. It's 500,000. Yeah, what's our population? Our population in Canada is approximately 39 million people right now. 69. No. So it is actually, I saw some of the correct answers there. It is half a million people a week. Yeah, that's a stunning amount, right? So then how many people do we estimate, okay, this can be a percentage, how many people do we estimate actually say, my dog is sick or my kid is sick or something else is happening, but definitely not saying I'm having a mental health crisis or I'm having some a struggle with my mental health. What percentage of people actually lie? Okay, let's just say it. They're not telling the truth about why they're calling it sick. So what percentage of people basically have the most stress, and what is the most stressful thing about their life? Any guess? I'll tell you, it's work. So basically, let's go look at the slide since everybody's, so basically, so 75% of people will call in sick, and almost half of working Canadians consider work to be the most stressful part of their day, which is, horrendous for me. That's half of us. Half of us consider that work is the most, not our kids, not our sick parents, not our elderly parents, not, whatever else. It's our work life. I think another striking number I want to point out is the economic impact, because again, as someone who works in workplace psychology, I look at, performance and, workforce and economic contribution to the country's economy and the province and so on. And we can see here that these mental health problems or issues cost our economy by 51 billion a year. And 20 billion of that is a result of work-related causes. So $20 billion has been impacted because of the work stresses we carry.
Tanya, we've got a question from the audience
Yes.
about why is work more stressful than family?
Well, again, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that in the next slides. We're going to look at all the factors of why the workplace can be stressful. So stay tuned. Thank you. So 1 in 5 Canadians are also experiencing mental health problems in any given year, and it is the #1 cause of disability in Canada. So many of us in pop culture have been exposed to the film The Devil Wears Prada, and I like to use it as the quintessential example of how a workplace should not look, and the tragedy of what that magazine looked like with regards to the people that worked there and the things that they had to deal with, especially with regards to their leadership, Miranda. So if you recall, poor Andy and Emily, 2 young women that worked for Miranda, were constantly barraged by insults, toxic behavior, throwing her desk, if you remember the details, throwing her coat and her keys in her every morning and her bag on the desk, like literally flinging it at them. And then poor Andy, she was constantly basically told she was chubby and fat and dumpy and was not attractive and didn't have nice clothes. So her physical being was literally attacked. And then there was Emily, who would come to work deathly ill and bring her germs to work, and just basically was working, 16-hour days, sick or not sick, and just a miserable soul at the office. And constantly you could see the anxiety that she carried. And then there was the leader, Miranda, who was a horrendous boss and very I could say, a caricature of some bosses, but actually I heard stories yesterday. I did the same presentation yesterday of very similar behavior. One young lady shared that her boss used to throw her car keys at her and say, "Go park my car." So these things actually happen in the toxic workplace. So what have you seen and heard? If you want to share a couple of anecdotes in the chat box, that would be cool. I'll share a couple of things that I read recently in the HRB, which is the HR magazine of people managers, people. Read an article about a research that was done during the pandemic, actually, about hybrid and work from home situation and the psychological safety and impact on employees during this time. And I'm going to pull out a couple of stories. So the debate of, some people have been thriving and doing really well and really like hybrid or working from home. So for example, one young lady, she was from an underrepresented group. She was a woman of color. She said that in the article, because she was working hybrid, she felt so much better. She wasn't experiencing microaggressions. She wasn't having to deal with, different biases and racism, because she was working from the comfort of her home and wasn't being targeted, because it's a lot harder to target people when you're on a call like this and you're a captive audience. You can see these things, whereas when they're in the workplace, they're more subtle in many cases and they're not as easily seen. Another young person in the article mentioned that he was miserable working from home. He felt completely disconnected, demotivated, miserable because he felt ignored by his boss and his team, and just was not thriving or performing in the working from home setting. Because he needed that connectivity to the team. So we can see how it's impacted on people mentally and emotionally, and their safety in the workplace, by removing themselves, by not being in the workplace. We can see the impact that's there. So Amal, do we have any anecdotes of people want to share things they've seen and heard in the workplace, maybe?
Waiting for some more to come in. I can share my own. Working from home, you feel like you're never off work, right? So one is always, I know some people who've gone on vacation and continue to work from vacation just because, we're always on.
Okay. Any other interesting stories of toxic work culture that people might want to share? Without names, of course, or details, but just, we'll call them bad boss behaviors. Any in the chat box, Amal?
No, I think that people are being a little cautious because this is being recorded.
Sure.
Oh, we have one example
Okay.
from someone who knows someone. My sister asked me, since I've been working from home, how I found my stress level. So she's a doctor, and her workplaces are constantly monitoring them by video. So they get notified if there's someone in activity in front of the screen for a certain amount of time. Oh, sorry, the patient, not the doctor. So the example is the patient is being monitored at home by video, if I'm getting that correctly. So that would sounds pretty awful to me, that you can't take a break in front of your screen.
Okay, that's a different one. So that's a hybrid workplace issue or work from home stressor for sure. One that I heard recently was a woman who was a native speaker of English. It was her first language. Who had a supervisor, a leader that she reported to, which her first language was not English. Her boss, this person, would continually correct her and berate her for her bad English, which I found very curious and interesting and very passive aggressive and strange in a way. But it caused a lot of stress because she felt like every time she submitted something written and or had to do a presentation or have a conversation with her boss literally would correct her English constantly. It was really hard to have a conversation. Thought that was
that's
very
an interesting one. Yeah.
An interesting one. Yeah. English was her first language. So
I've got a comment in from hi Mario, former student of mine. Nice to hear from you. So he has an example from a previous work experience where they were expected to work 12-hour-a-day minimums and be on call all the time. So no room to breathe or anything like that. And if you called in sick, they were made to feel that they couldn't call in sick or that sort of thing.
Yeah, calling in sick was definitely a faux pas. I remember those days as well. Those were very those were dark days. Thank God we're moving away from that now because of the current climate with COVID. So COVID is a bad thing, but there has been good changes in the workplace based on trying to keep people healthy. So that's a good thing.
We're getting lots more. People are just getting warmed up with this. So we've got another comment that from someone who feels less free working from home because they have to be available constantly and next to the phone all the time. Whereas at least when you're in the workplace, you can, if you're gone from your office having lunch, you actually have a break. So this person feels like they have to be working all the time. I've got another person who said their boss yelled at her when she got frustrated, and no matter what the individual did, the boss was taking it out on them, and it was very much of a roller coaster, sometimes being kind, sometimes being outrageous. And then we've got another one where the manager called him about his budget item on the way to a family member's funeral, even though they knew there was a funeral that day.
Oh, okay. So here we are. We all know that these workplaces exist and these kind of leaders and people and teammates exist. So what can we do? It's not all doom and gloom, everybody. There are things that we can do to make things better. And again, I'm a big believer in it starts with us, right? So let's talk about those things. Let's expand a little more on the risks and contributors. So some of these were actually touched on. And someone asked about 5 minutes ago, what are, some of the things that make, a sick workplace or someone ill from work. And here are some really common examples. So what we call these risk and contributors to psychological safety and poor mental health in the workplace. You can see them, you might have experienced them, but these are the most common, as well as excessive workload. I want to pick this one out because that leads to burnout. And my first love when I was in my undergrad, one of my first subjects of interest was actually burnout. Imagine being, 20, 21 years old. I was, fascinated. How is it that you put yourself in such a situation where you burn out? And burnout is a very serious psychological situation based on too many work stressors. So I think a lot of us have experienced that at some point in our career, especially when you've had a long career. Burnout is definitely one of the top risks of psychological illness in the workplace. Discrimination, I touched on that earlier. Harassment could be any kind of harassment, could be sexual or not. Unfair treatment, people feeling like others are getting favored or getting more recognition or reward. Very feelings of resentment and unfairness can come out from that. So these are ones that we've identified and we know that are very, very common. Certainly conflict among teams. It happens, conflict happens, and actually conflict can be very productive if it's respectful. Again, it's not about being nice. You saw earlier, it's not about being nice. It's about understanding parameters and lines drawn in the sand and being able to have respectful debates. So there is hope. I don't want us to think, oh my gosh, all these, awful things are happening in the workplace and there's nowhere to go and what do we do? There's no tools. No, this is what I said earlier. I want everybody to leave with some ideas and some suggestions around tools and practical best practices that you can bring back with you to your workplace, either as an employee, a leader, a colleague, yourself. So we are, as a country, we are leading the pack. We are the first at this standard, the National Standard of Canada for Psychological Health and Safety in the Workplace, aka the standard, was released in 2013, and it was the first of its kind in the world. That's how progressive we are and concerned we are about workplace health, mental health, and psychological safety. So basically, you can see what it is. It's guidelines and tools that organizations and companies and employers can use to promote and prevent psychological harm at work. So it's online. I'm going to be sharing later the links to access all of these materials. And I'm happy to share my slides as well at some point. If anybody would like to reach out, we can share. But basically, when this was rolled out, there were 40 workplaces in Canada that piloted this, and they were baseline measured at the current state of the workplace, and then later, as the pilot rolled on and they started implementing some of the tools and some of the initiatives in the standard, they were measured again later to see the performance outcomes, to see the level then of people's opinions about how they felt healthy in the workplace or not. So we call them the first 40 organizations and employers that took this on to say we're committing to this and let's see how it will benefit our workplace. So in the standard, there are 13 factors of psychological health and safety in the workplace, and here they are identified here. So these are the ones that I feel, and people who are organizational psychologists, people who practice people practice, should be top of the mind for an employer to consider when they're looking at the culture of psychological health and safety in the workplace. These are the things that should be really implemented and well thought out and certainly rolled out amongst the staff. So pulling a few out, I want to highlight here. So for example, growth and development. That's L&D, that's learning, that's progression in the career, that's career development, that's upskilling, that's scaling of competencies, and feeling like I can do my job because I have the right tools and the right training. Very important. And sometimes L&D from an organizational perspective, because of budgetary restrictions, it gets really put on the sidelines, but it's actually very, very important. I went into an organization with high demotivation because the organization was in flux for many years. And when I sat with some of the staff to understand, because we were going through a change management period, when I sat with some of the staff to understand where they were very unhappy and where it came from, one of the top first things they said was, we haven't had, in 5 years, we haven't had any investment in our growth as people, in our people potential, in our learning and development and our development as professionals. So I found that was very sad. And they were very demotivated, and it was a factor. So that's, sometimes employers don't realize that. Again, the usual suspects: workload management, psychological protection. So policies help with that one. Once an organization puts in proper psychological health and safety policies into their organization, staff can feel safe then that they know they have those policies to lean on, and they do feel protected, and they feel that you know, they have that to lean on if something happens within the organization. So these are 13, we'll call them best practices that really should be well embedded in the workplace. So as mentioned, why is this important? Why is this important for us as leaders, as peers, as colleagues, and as organizations and employers? Well, because in the end, I think you saw the numbers. We're talking billions of dollars, billions of Canadian dollars, our impact from an economic perspective when it's not done well and there's issues, right? So really, there's a whole field of psychology very popular in England, it's business psychology, but they talk about these things, about why good mental health and wellness in the workplace is good for business. And here again are the really high level obvious things. But I mean, really, let's just say it, it's just the right thing to do, right? That's just, you know, an ethics thing. It's just, it has to be. And of course, then there's the business arguments that really leaders should look at, because again, they do impact the bottom line. And we can talk about, again, those usual things like productivity and performance. Basically, if your people are performing and there is output and deliverables are being met, you know, it's going to impact your economic outcome as a company. Obviously, again, the employee satisfaction thing is a very important one. You have happy employees, again, you have better business. It's just correlated. It's just almost common sense. You don't need psychologists to tell you this. One that I love to always talk about is the employer of choice factor. And in Canada, I don't hear this term as much as I did when I worked in other parts of the world, but that's really high on a lot of employers' list of things to become an employer of choice. And essentially that reputation and that desire for people to go work for a company comes out of a lot of inclusivity and belonging work, and the positive reputation that is then put out by employees. So I love my employer, I love my work, and they do A, B, and C for me, and I feel so included, and I feel so happy and content to be there. I would recommend anybody would work for that employer. So that's where that comes from too. And that reputation spills over into business, could be sales, could be business development, could be, again, just the wider, you know, sector seeing the employer as the employer of choice. And certainly retention. Retention is huge. From an HR, if there's HR people out there, you know, it costs a lot of money to recruit people, a lot of time, and you want to keep those people, especially if they're good people. So there's a whole business case about recruitment and retention, of course. So what can we do? These are practical, what I'm calling takeaways, tools, and best practices. I'm going to break them down now, and this one is for colleagues and employees, for what you can do individually. Basically, what you want to go to do every day at work is come to work with your best self. Come in with a positive attitude. These are simple things that we can do every day. Achieve work-life balance. Yes, that is on us. That is on each of us. I'm thinking about me and some of my teammates. We're gym goers. We go to the gym because we know it helps our psychological health and helps us manage stress. That's you as a professional. That's the onus is on you. So these are things that you can do that actually impact on your work, your team, and your work life. Ask for help. I mean, there's times when, again, back to stress, I'm so stressed at work, I can't manage, I'm drowning. Ask for help, ask for support, lean on your teammates, right? Be a supportive peer if you see someone else in the office going through something. Offer to chip in if you can. So these are very simple things that we can all do. Now, I'm sure there are a lot of managers and leaders on this presentation today. So what can you do? What can you do as a leader in your organization, a leader in your team? So ambiguity is never a friend at work. Leaders can mitigate a lot of stress for their team by ensuring clear roles and responsibilities are laid out. Something as simple as that, for people to understand what is required of them and what they need to do, how they need to perform, and how they need to deliver. If those candid conversations are happening, everybody will feel safe, because being unsure and not understanding or not knowing what you need to do causes a lot of internal stress for people. So as a leader, that's really important to keep that very clear. Recognition can go a long way. Kudos at the table, you know, in the weekly meeting, a card, an email with, you know, a really great accolade and a quote. You know, wonderful small things can be done just to make employees and make your team feel appreciated. And certainly another high level one I would love to pull out is that as leaders, it's our responsibility to look for early signs of workplace stress until we don't want it to get to the point where it's escalating. That's when conflicts start to happen. That's when people start to rub each other the wrong way. Look for the early signs. Some of the early signs of stress in the workplace you can see amongst your team are, again, staying late, being very agitated when in communications, seeing interpersonal or inter-team rub or conflict. So these things are quite identifiable. So as a leader, I think it's always good to keep an eye out to see if things are copacetic, and if they're not, catch them early so they don't escalate. And then the big picture. So what can employers and organizations do? Because really it's a trickle down. Really, that's psychological health and safety and wellness in the workplace. It starts at the top. It starts from the C-suite. It starts from owners, leaders, and you know, organization as a whole. So really, you could put policies in place. These are simple things you can do. Ensure there's a proper conflict resolution system. I remember going into an organization, into a very archaic conflict resolution system, and I thought to myself, what is this? You know, literally investigations of team members and people from the HR teams, and I was in the HR team. So yeah, I just thought it was very very old-fashioned way of dealing with conflict and interpersonal things, is investigating people. So certainly, doing simple things like sharing health promotion strategies, celebrating World Mental Health Day, very, you know, simple thing to do, but it highlights it. It says, as an employer, I care. This is really high on our list of priorities, and we want to ensure that everybody understands that we are here to support mental health and psychological safety. And it's more than an EAP program. I've heard employers say to me, oh, Tanya, we have a wonderful EAP program where our staff can access counselors and therapists 24/7, whatever. I'm like, that is the minimum of what you should be doing. You know, it's more than an EAP program. It's embedded in the workplace as well. You know, it could be a peer support group. It could be lunch and learns like this, you know, offering such activities as this. So it's more than just, you know, we have really great health insurance. I'm just checking the time here. So back to the standard. There, as I said, there were 40 pilot entities that took on this challenge of implementing the standard when it was rolled out here in Canada. And these 40 companies were tracked, of course, and to see the progress and to see how the tools and best practices put in place were positively impacting on the workplace and the people. So, you know, basically things I'm looking at here, I'm looking at the slide, things that were really popular and important were, again, things that raised, you know, initiatives or events that raised or tried to break down the barriers of the stigma of mental health, putting it out there, saying, you know, this is something that 50% of us actually suffer from and struggle with. So making it more mainstream, and again, having those candid, put it out there kind of conversations. Again, back to the workplace policy, easy one, educational initiatives. EAP is there, earlier intervention, and again, having webinars and having talks such as this one, putting resources on the intranet. These are some of the best practices that the companies implemented from the standard that were suggested from the standard, celebrating Mental Health Week in May. So I want to go back actually, because there's something that I meant to ask you all, because I want it to be a little more interactive. So back to you all, back to us all. Again, putting it back on us as individuals. Amal, if you can help me with the chat box. What have you done recently? Or if you wish, what has an employer done? If you really want to, you know, do a kudos or a shout out to your employer, what have you or your employer, or okay, let's talk about the leaders too. What have you as a leader done? What have you as an employee done? Or what has your organization done recently to support or improve mental health and psychological health and safety in your workplace? Things that have been implemented. Well, I'll shout out to Engineers Nova Scotia. They did this, so bravo. I'm gonna say kudos to that organization. They said mental health and psychological wellness is an important topic, enough that we need to have it. We need to do this in January. So there's an example. Would anybody like to share something they've done or their organization has done in the last little while? Anything coming in, Amal?
Yeah, I've got one. We've got one of our audience members says they make sure to set up some virtual coffee breaks with people in the office just to get out of when they're working from home, just to keep back in the loop. I've got another comment where the managers at work had to take a mental health first aid course.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
And again, I'm going to share resources now in a few minutes.
Yeah, I've got another mental health first aid training being offered to employees. I've got another person who, oh, they're coming in fast now,
Okay.
who says that, where they just chat, the leader sends a note to their team just to say, have you seen this on Netflix? Or to chat about other things that they would normally talk about at the water cooler, but haven't been, just to stay connected. I've got someone where each employee was recently provided with a day of purpose to explore well-being. So that can be part of a mental health week. I'd love to hear more about what that means. Um, I've got another audience member says the team members were encouraged to set boundaries between work and their personal life. Oh, free access to the Calm app. One individual. I don't know if that's provided by work or not.
Maybe their insurance program could be.
Yeah, so the insurance. Oh, good idea. We've got SNC recently rolled out some psychological safety training, which they've also encouraged us to clearly define working time from personal time.
Right.
And then we've got EAP program officers confidential presentations similar to this. So I think confidentiality is mentioned a couple of times. Someone has access to Happify app. One of the members. So I've not heard about that one, but.
Well, this is all good news. It sounds like organizations are stepping up and doing their part to lead this. And as I said, that's where it comes from. It comes from the bigger entity and from leadership, certainly. I know for our COVE team, we have new insurance, and I'm really proud to say that we have again, health and wellness stipend now, where we have a certain allotment of financial support towards any health and wellness activities we want to partake in. Could be, joining a gym. So that's what I did, and that's how I'm going to use my money. My health and wellness allotment is I joined the gym because it helps my mental health. And again, that's well researched and well documented that if you're physically healthy, physical health and mental health are tied and go hand in hand. So it's important for companies also to recognize that. Another one I heard of recently is For Me to We Day, which I thought was really super cool. Me to We Day was implemented to basically build on the research around volunteering and how that is a proponent to mental health for people. And when we contribute to a cause greater than ourselves, and we are part of our community, and we give, it actually boosts our own mental health. It actually is a major contributor when you start looking outside of yourself and giving. So a company organized, I think if I remember, it was a food drive for the food bank. So all the staff got together and made a list of things they wanted to contribute. And that was their Me to We Day, that they went and got hundreds of dollars worth of, food and goods and brought them to the food bank. So that was a kind of cool, that was a team building activity too. So it was double, right? So then we know that working as a team also brings psychological health and wellness in the workplace. Amal, any others you want to share before I move on? Any others there in the box?
Nope, no more have come in, but I know I personally, especially every winter, make a pact with myself to spend more time outside. So that's another one.
That's a good one. Yeah. Fresh air and sunshine. We know that definitely is something for, again, achieving your work-life balance. I'm looking at my slide here, and helping us manage our stress, right? Because if we're not managing our stress and we're bringing that to work, work might be, of course, causing us the stress, but if we're not managing our own stress, it definitely impacts on the workplace. Okay, that's great. So I was curious to what people or businesses were doing here in Nova Scotia, to contribute to these layers and these levels. So what I'll do now is I'm going to share So if anybody wants to take a screenshot, these are the resources that I used. All publicly accessible resources, all Canadian. I wanna point out the Canadian Occupational Health and Safety people. They offer really cool free online courses, and I think they're quite, you know, extensive. I think some of them are an hour and a half. You know, they're like they're small bites, but still, you know, nothing to poo-poo for sure. And I think you get a certificate. I haven't done these courses myself, but I plan on it. You get a certificate of completion. So they have the mindful employee and the psychological health and safety awareness and the assembling pieces. So that's about teamwork and psychological health and safety. So you can see those free online courses. The national standard is there, the one I referred to, that was rolled out here in Canada, the first of its kind. And then there's resources from the Canadian Mental Health Association on workplace mental health. And the Check In Your Mental Health app is pretty cool. The mental health meter, I used this when I worked on a project in Newfoundland with young people. And I would get them to use this this really quick survey that basically looks at your mental health at that moment. So it's a mental health meter, and it gives you a really quick. It spits out a really quick assessment of how you're doing at that moment. So it'd be kind of cool to take that in the morning and then take that in the evening. Check out your mental health as it goes through the day. So yeah, so these are the resources I'd like to share. And as I say, I'm happy to share the slides with you if anybody's interested, and or you can reach out to our friends at Engineers Nova Scotia or myself. I'm on LinkedIn, Tanya Lush, Director of Workforce at COVE. So thank you all for your time, and I hope people can go away with ways to move forward, practical tools, easily implemented suggestions and activities. And that's always what I'm about, is how can you take this information and use it in a practical way that you know, it's just not me up here as a talking head, but you're like, oh, these are great takeaways. I'm going to actually do some of these things that Tanya talked about. So thank you all for your time. Is there any questions out there? I want to give a minute. I see we have about a minute left. I hope I answered, you know, any questions in your head that you didn't even put in the chat box, but please take a minute, put something in the chat box if there's a burning question that I can address.
Well, the chat box has a lot of thank yous to you, Tanya, and we have 1 or 2 more minutes to see what comes in.
Sure.
Yeah, mostly thank you. So great to see you all.